Well, welcome, Practical Finances friends and family. This is Curtis, your host, and I want to thank you for joining me for episode 3 of the fall season. Now, I'm so thrilled about today's show. My special guest today is TJ Ojehomon. Now, he's a realtor with Realty One Group. Now, I've known TJ for about 6 years now. We work together as managers at a bank called Fifth Third Bank. Now, TJ is a young brother, but he is one of the smartest, insightful, purpose-driven, and godly man that I know. All right, he's also a loving husband and a father of 2 beautiful babies. Now, with that being said, let me introduce you to my guest. Hello, TJ. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Curtis. How are you, man?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, man. I just want to thank you again for joining me this evening, volunteering to do this, man. Just to dispense your knowledge, your wealth of knowledge and insight and experience to the audience, man. I really appreciate it. I think the audience is going to benefit for sure.
Well, Curtis, we go back, baby. So, anytime I can partner with such a great man, we're going to do it. So
Man,
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that so much, man. Well, man, let's just jump right in. Let's do a little humanizing here. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, man. Let the audience know who TJ is.
Absolutely. Well, I'm TJ Ojehomon. As Curtis said, I am a licensed affiliate broker, or better known as a realtor in the state of Tennessee, as well as a certified financial coach under Ramsey Solutions. I was raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but I've been in Nashville for the last 10 years. Graduate of Lipscomb University with a degree in public communication and leadership. Ultimately just, I like to, right. I like to help people, man. That's what I do. I have done a lot of mentoring around life skills for young adults and college students. And I still try to do that today. And ultimately, I like just really doing a lot of financial literacy education. It's a big passion of mine, and showing marginalized communities that may not have the access to information on how to close the wealth gap, give themselves more opportunities so that they can change the generations behind them. So that's my heart. That's what I do. And of course, just try to stay in alignment with that.
And that's why TJ is on my show. I ask you just for that, man. That's what I said. Purpose driven, insightful. That's why you're on, man. Thank you for sharing that,
Thank
man.
you, sir.
Love it. Love it. Well, man, let's do this. Let's go ahead and get started, man. Let's just jump right in. You're a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what a realtor does. Just give me like a little brief definition of what a realtor does and what it is.
Yeah. So realtors are essentially agents that assist in the transition of real estate transactions. And so essentially we aid buyers and sellers to essentially move their property. And so there are a lot of things involved with that, all the way from coaching sometimes for clients about the current real estate market, to also coordinating vendors. We help clients get exposure from everything from home inspectors to bank lenders to repair specialists, you name it. So we have to definitely be a quarterback and just really being a connector of resources for clients. And then also we do handle and manage a lot of documentations that help and legal contracts that help with the transaction of that real estate, plus boots on the ground, getting them private access to see other people's homes or to allow their homes to be seen. So it does multiple things, but ultimately that's what we do. We assist buyers and sellers with the transaction of property.
Somebody said, I heard this before, that realtors, number one, they're advocates for the buyer, for instance, or seller, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on there. Um, it's equivalent to when you don't want to go into court, for instance, without an attorney. You want to have somebody that's going to represent you and represent your interest. would you say that's the job of the realtor also?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, a lot of people think that, it may be cheaper to take out a realtor.
Hmm.
But the reality is that considering if you've never done transactions with real estate before and you're trying to do it on an open market,
Sure.
then you definitely need that assistance because there's so many moving parts.
Hmm.
I just had a client call me. It was actually a family friend's nephew,
Hmm.
and he called me at the last second, and he said, "Hey TJ, my aunt gave me your name. I'm looking to purchase my first condo in East Nashville. It's a new construction community. I really want this one, and I was just wondering, like, hey, is it gonna cost me anything to work with you, or should I work with you, or should I just work with that builder community or the builder that's actually selling the new construction?"
Sure.
And I said, man, no, absolutely bring me in because you need somebody to represent you. The builder doesn't represent you, and you
Hmm.
need help kind of coordinating and having a point of contact. And so I wrote up the contract, did the negotiation with the other agent,
Hmm.
and there's been so many different moving parts that he hasn't understood. And so I've definitely came in and been a resource to them to say, hey, man, this is what they need. Hey, you need to go to this website. Hey, we need to tell your lender XYZ. Hey, here's the document you have to sign. And it's just been helpful. It hadn't cost him anything because the builder is paying me to represent him.
Oh, okay.
But that's just one of those situations to where he brought me in, and it's definitely been very valuable for him. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want one because there's just so many. Now, when you're doing like a private transaction, maybe between family members or between a close personal friend, that's
Hmm.
a lot less red tape. You can usually take that to a real estate attorney, and they can do that whole transaction privately. But if
Okay.
you're definitely operating on the open market and the retail market, you need somebody working with you if you don't know what you're doing, if you hadn't did it before.
Well, like what we were saying earlier, it is essential to have an advocate who's looking out for you to make sure that you're getting everything you want and need out of the transaction.
Mm.
And would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you did a great job because one of my questions was going to be, what's the role in the the property purchasing process? But you did it. You already answered. So great job on that one. Um, can you tell me about some of the specific steps that like, for instance, a new home buyer can expect when they are trying to purchase their first house? Kind of take me through. You meet with a client. They are, interested in purchasing a house, and we'll just fast forward and assume that they've already been pre-approved. What can you
Mhm.
take me through that process, if you don't mind, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk in today's terms.
Okay.
In today's market, there's probably a shortage of housing by probably about 3 million plus homes across the country.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough housing for the buyers that are out in the market currently, and it's been trending like that for a while.
Mm.
And so with that, the markets now, especially metropolitan cities, are having a lot of traffic, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of movement, and you have to be fast, you have to be ready. And so that's the first thing, is to understand it's not like 10, 15 years ago
Mm-hmm.
when you could it was you could walk up to anything, you could get approved for anything. It's just different now, especially after 2008, and even in COVID there's been even more restrictions that have come out.
Of course, yeah.
But essentially, what that looks like is the first thing is a conversation about the process.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what to expect, and then you need to know what kind of financial position you want to be in.
Okay.
You'll hear a lot of realtors that tell you the first thing you need to do is go talk to a lender. And I never tell people that. Now, maybe I have an advantage because I was a lender,
Of course. Yeah.
Curtis, as we used to do. So we have a
Mhm.
lot of that insight.
Yes,
But
sir.
running to a lender before you even understand the process of what's going on to me can be a little disservicing. And
Mm.
so, what I like to tell people to do is first off, I want you to understand the process about what's going on, what the market is currently doing. The other thing is too is really understanding why you buy homes. You got a lot of people that buy homes for a Facebook picture, but it's
Mm.
so much more than that.
Mm.
Or you got people that buy homes because they're tired of paying rent. You really want to understand the undertone of why you're buying homes
Mhm.
because it also helps you when you're actually doing the shopping and you can let go of some old preconceived notions that may not be relevant in today's market.
Oh, wow.
So that's first thing. So I like to educate people, help set the framework.
Okay.
After we set the framework, we want to talk about what it costs, right? So how much money, TJ, is it really going to require me to do this?
Sure.
And typically, in most cases, to purchase a home, you really need about 5 to 7% of the purchase price
Okay.
to close on a home. Okay, 3% is typically your down payment,
Right.
which will consist of whatever Freddie Mae or Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae wants, or whether it's conventional or FHA, and then on the back end you'll also have closing fees, which could be 2 to 3% in addition to that down payment, right? And
Closing costs.
so, yeah, and closing costs. And
Mhm.
so ultimately, it can add up to about 5 to 7%. Now, that's if you get no assistance. That's if you got no down payment plan, like no first time home buyers plan or anything like that. That's just if you do it straight up. So I like to tell people that number first so they understand worst case scenario. Then we can work backwards from there.
Very good.
Once they get the financial aspect, because there's no sense of always just running to a lender if
Mhm.
you've got $1,000 in your savings account. That's just way too thin to try to buy a house, right? So
Mhm.
even
Okay. Okay.
you need to first make sure you can save some money. You need to first maybe do a credit review if you got the ability to go. I tell people to go to annualcreditreport.com,
Very good.
federal government sanctioned website, to go and check their credit report absolutely free. Make sure there's no major issues or concerns on there. So that you don't waste the lender pool. You may can do some work early on for obvious things and then get the lender involved to really see, narrow down exactly what you need at that point.
Let me make a quick point.
So
Audience,
yeah,
you remember several weeks ago, I talked about annualcreditreport.com and your credit report. See, this is a real life application of that particular service. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, absolutely. It's a great resource because the other thing too, I tell people is that when we talk about credit, which is a huge aspect of financing a home, if you're not buying a home cash, most people don't.
Mhm.
You got to really understand where you're going to be as far as a credit position, and a lot of people get caught up on their score. But what they
Mhm.
don't realize is that, let's say if you got a Credit Karma or if you got a couple little different websites,
Mhm.
those are what are called simulators. They're credit simulators. So they are guessing what your score should be
Mm.
when you go and pull. It's not your actual score. And
Right.
so a lot of people will go and they'll take that score to the bank, and they'll think, hey, I've got a score, I've got 640, and I'm going to be good. Well, there's first off three different scores that you have,
Mhm.
and not all lenders use all three.
Mhm.
Some lenders only use one of those scores, and not all those scores may be equal. The other
Right.
thing is too, even if you've got a score, you've got to have a qualifying credit report.
Mhm.
Um, I've had clients that they had essentially the qualifying score, but
Mhm.
maybe they've missed a payment, a 30-day payment in the last 12 months, which knocked them out of certain program qualifications.
Sure.
Maybe they have debt to income ratios that are too high.
Mhm.
So, if, the lender is going to say, hey, if we're going to give you a 45% debt to income ratio, so in comparison to your gross income, in contrast to how much debt they're going to be okay with you taking on,
Right.
at 45% for $3,000 a month,
Mhm.
they may say, hey, we don't really want you to be higher than 1350 a month in debt payments. and
Gotcha.
you've already got $900 a month in debt payments, which only allows you to have a $400 a month mortgage.
Right.
So, what can you do for a $400 a month mortgage? You're talking about
A fifty
a
thousand dollar house.
70. Exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
so things like that,
Mm-hmm.
annualcreditreport.com helps you go through the credit report and make sure the report itself is healthy. And if you actually make sure that the report itself is healthy, then the credit score will do naturally what it needs to do.
Gotcha.
That's just a given. You don't have to manufacture credit. If you do the right habits and the right principles, credit naturally assess itself like it should, as long as everything is accurate.
I want to
So,
go back real quick. There's something that you said a minute ago, which was very insightful. There are a lot of people who
mhm,
talk about that when I have Credit Karma and my score is X, but then when I pull the credit bureau, it's completely different. So what you said was so insightful, and that is
mhm.
Credit Karma is a simulator, not the actual credit score. That's very
Yep,
important information to dispense right there. I want people to hear that. So it
absolutely.
gives you a good idea, but it's not the actual report. You only get that from the score rather when you the best way to get is when you have your credit pull when you're trying to purchase something. A lot.
Right.
Am
Exactly.
I incorrect or correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because what the lender is actually going to do is the lender is going to pay money to the three credit bureaus. They're going to pay Experian, they're going to pay Equifax, they're going to pay TransUnion
Mhm.
to get your exact score.
Okay.
And so when you're going to Credit Karma, that's a simulator. Credit Karma is not paying those bureaus to get your exact score. And
Gotcha.
so unless you pay them, usually there's a markup when consumers pay out of pocket to get those scores
Hmm.
directly. The lender actually has to pay for them and get the direct scores. And once they get the direct scores, then at that point, that's what they utilize to make their assessment. So just want to be aware of that. Just want to be aware of that.
That's really good.
And so, yeah, and once you go through the lender and you've kind of done that work and you've done that assessment, once you go through the lender, you're going to get what's called a pre-approval. And
Hmm.
that pre-approval at that point will tell you what's your maximum limit that you're able to buy.
Hmm.
Now, keep in mind with lenders sometimes operate off of gross income. So sometimes they'll tell you that you can buy a little bit more than what you can actually afford. So
Hmm.
you still always want to have your number in your mind. But then once you get that pre-approval and you're cleared through all of that, you go shopping and you figure out what's available on the market. And then at that point, you work to get things under contract. You have to get out there, do showings quickly. You have to make strong competitive offers. You get under contract, and then it's the countdown, the closing table, and ultimately home ownership. So a few different steps, and it is work. Everybody I talk to is like, man, this is work.
Yes.
But once you cross that finish line, it is one of the most awesome feelings ever. So definitely, if you have the ability to do that, it's a huge part of wealth building.
Sure.
It's a huge part of equity participation.
Sure.
So if you ever got the ability to go and do that, uh, you know, make that a priority, and it's really important.
And I would love to be able to talk about, the wealth building aspect of it. I think I'll have you back so we can kind of delve into that because that is, I mean, that to me is the probably the number one way to build wealth is through real estate.
All day long,
People
all
always
day
have
long.
to buy, they'll have to stay, they're gonna have to have somewhere to live. And
Yeah,
so yeah,
yeah.
regardless of the economy, real estate is always there.
Well, and I tell folks there's three ways to build wealth, and there's really only three.
Mm.
It's real estate, it's business ownership, and it's participation in the stock market.
There we go.
If you don't play ball in those three areas, at some point, a lot of people get excited about their income or they strive to make six figures. I'm
Mhm.
like, that's irrelevant. I could teach you, to be a millionaire on $60,000 a year.
Yes, sir.
But unless you participate in those three arenas, real estate, business ownership, and or stock market participation, you're just not going to build the wealth. It's too hard to do it without getting into those ball games. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love that. Love that. Love that piece of advice. Audience, listen to what TJ's saying. He's wise. Let me ask you a
thank you,
question
sir.
here. Let,
Yeah.
um, the negotiating process. I don't go too deep, but I want you to kind of go through a scenario where a negotiating scenario. All right, you got a seller who is selling their home, and you have the buyer, and they want to offer a certain price. How does that song and dance, so to speak, how does that materialize, if that makes sense, how I'm asking it?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So when you write up a contract
Mm-hmm.
to a seller, there are several elements of that contract that I'm checking for if I'm representing a seller,
Okay.
right? The first one is the loan type. What type of loan does this buyer have? Because that can tell me the kind of process we're going to have. And it
Mm,
can also tell me the potential level of success we're going to have to actually finish the deal,
mm,
right? So, are they doing THDA? Are they doing an FHA loan? Are they doing a conventional loan? Conventional is the king of the loans, right? If you're going to do it, are they doing cash? Are they doing a veterans loan?
mm.
I look at those and kind of
Okay.
make the assessment on, okay, what kind of quality loan do we have here? Uh,
Great.
then we also look at time to close.
Mm-hmm.
How long is this buyer going to take? So if I see on the contract that you want to close in 45 days, that's not as attractive to somebody that wants to close in 21 days, or a
Mm,
cash buyer who wants to close in 15 days,
sure.
right? So how long you take to actually close on the loan plays another factor. You
Mm-hmm.
also have the big one is, of course, what's the price that you're offering?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you still have some uneducated buyers, unfortunately, that think it's the swap meet,
Mm-hmm.
and that we can just kind of throw prices on the wall and it stick. Oh, they want 300,000, offer them 265. That's a good offer, and see if they take it. Well, you're wasting time.
Sure.
Remember, there's 3 million homes short across the country
Mm-hmm.
as far as the inventory we need. So
Mm-hmm.
when you got a good quality home, there are people lined up out the door for that one home,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if it's affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really make low ball offers like that and expect to win. It's
Sure.
just not realistic.
Yes, sir.
So what price points you offer? Sellers want to look for full price or very close to full price as much as possible.
Sure.
And then you also have concessions.
Mm,
Concessions are when buyers may ask, in exchange for closing this deal, I'd like some financial assistance back, or I'd like some things to be conceded to me or provided to me. So this could be, I want $5,000 towards closing costs. This could be, I want a home warranty. This could be that I want you to include the washer and dryer as
there we
well as
go.
all the appliances
Yeah.
and your bedroom suite.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, you can write that in there. And if, as a seller, I see a lot of concessions, I may hesitate a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
those are key elements. There's several elements that sellers look at to determine if this is a deal they want to finish
Sure.
or work with. And
Sure.
so it just depends. So, but as a buyer's agent, if I'm representing somebody that's going to buy, I
Mm-hmm.
want to figure out a way where the seller feels like they're winning,
Mm-hmm.
but also my buyer is getting the success that they want to. If
Sure.
you got some agents come in, it's like, I'm going to only advocate for my buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I really want to advocate for my buyer, I want the seller on the other side to feel good
Right.
when they see my contract. So that's my skill, is negotiating a feel good situation for the seller that still ultimately helps my buyer. So things like that come into play for sure.
So that takes so being a realtor is almost like an art, so to speak. It's a definite skill set to be able
Yeah.
to navigate. Like you said, you want to make sure your buyer gets what they want, but you want to make the seller feel good about uh, giving up some things, or just make them feel good
Right.
is what you want.
Right.
Okay, okay, I get
Right.
that. Makes sense.
Absolutely.
I've dabbled in the business. I've never heard it explained that way. Again, that's why I
Yeah.
have your show.
Yeah, you want to. I had a professor tell me in one time in my negotiation class. He said that when you in the art of negotiation, he was a mediator, an attorney, And what he would do is he would do private settlements and negotiations for people that wanted to stay out of court.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was his skill set. Charged like, I don't know, 300 an hour to
Sure.
have those conversations with clients. And one thing that he said is it's never about finding a win lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's also not having a win win. It's about having an acceptable.
Oh,
And if you're able to create a situation where both parties feel like there's an acceptable, it isn't quite what I want, but I can work with that. It isn't quite what I want, but I'll roll with that too.
okay.
That's how you usually can find the winning situation. People that say, I got to win in this situation in real estate, if you're negotiating, you're going to lose more deals. So I've got to make sure that I want to find an acceptable middle ground for all the parties involved. And I've been very successful, thankfully, this year at winning deals with that mindset for clients who have thought, man, I'm surprised. I mean, I've wrote up contracts, man, several contracts. My last several contracts I've written up and sent
Mm.
over, I didn't even get a counter back. I mean, it was just like, yep,
Oh,
take it,
wow.
take it as is. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's about how you really set up the contract to make it, attractive.
Okay. That's outstanding, man. Good stuff. Audience, great stuff that you're hearing here. Um, I got one more question for you, TJ.
Okay.
Um, if I'm selling my home,
Mm-hmm.
how would you market my house?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
explain
That's a good
the
question. Good question. So first thing that we want to do is I usually go through and I tell people, we want to take a look at the home, kind of see. I've got a listing appointment tomorrow, actually, so I'm going to be doing this.
Mhm.
And you want to go through and you want to kind of talk about, see what the home feels like, see what it looks like, see some of its qualities, some of its features. And then you want to kind of help the seller determine how much money, that we think we could probably list it for. What's the price that we want to list it for?
Mhm.
And then at the same time, I want to encourage the seller to present the home in a neat and clean way. You might have a really great home, but if it's not presented well, it doesn't matter. I lose all the essence of the value that it actually has.
Right,
And so we
presentation.
want to make sure that, yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to make sure that doorknobs are clean and attached to the doors. I
Mm.
want to make sure that carpets have been deep cleaned if there's a worn out spot there. I want to make sure that, if a faucet head has loose handles and it's distracting and there's a drip coming from it, that we probably just need to replace that. I want to make sure that if I've got scuff marks on my walls, let's go ahead and do some touch up paint.
Mm.
Things like that make a huge difference
Sure.
to what a buyer sees when they first walk through the door. Buyers don't have as much patience with people that are more that specialize in real estate. Sometimes we can see past the clutter, but if a buyer that's like, I want this to be my forever home, they're not going to really see past all of that. So we want to make sure that they're presenting it in a good way. And then also on the other side, when I start marketing, I place my properties on 150 websites,
Hmm.
marketing websites. So just in case, so just also help to make this connection for folks that are looking and searching for homes on Zillow
Hmm.
or Redfin or Realtor.com or Trulia.
Hmm.
Understand those are marketing websites.
Hmm.
Those are not all of the homes available on your market. All of the homes available on the retail market are placed in MLS,
Okay.
multiple listing services. And so only about 50 to 55% of the homes that you see on Zillow
Hmm.
is actually what's available. So 50 to 55%. So out of all the, excuse me, let me say it like this, out of all the homes you see on the market,
Hmm.
Zillow only has about 50% of the homes that are actually on the market. There's always way more homes than what Zillow is showing you.
That is very
But
informative. That's good. I didn't know
yeah,
that. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
Mm.
there's double the amount on the back end. Realtors will have access to that to be able to show you.
Okay.
And so also too, but I do want to market on those sites because that's where the consumer typically looks. We
Sure.
take professional photos.
Hmm.
You'd be surprised how many homes I see that take cell phone shots of the home. And cell phone shots are so bad. There's so much data that makes people scroll right past it.
Sure.
But you take professional photos, so it's shown in the best light. Typically, if I can do a virtual home tour, we'll do that as well. And then also, we want to do things like host open houses, so that we can market and everybody can kind of take a look at once. And we want to price it correctly. One thing that I see sellers sometimes try to do is they try to price it at the absolute highest end of the market, sometimes beyond that, and that's the wrong strategy. Okay. In fact, if you actually overprice it, what's going to happen is that when I'm doing filter searches on Zillow as a consumer, and I look for a 3-bed, 2-bath house with a 2-car garage for $250,000, when I go and see your house at $250,000, and it doesn't look like the other houses at $250,000, I'm going to skip over yours because yours doesn't hold the same quality as the other ranges I'm looking at. And so, yeah, exactly. So the better strategy is to actually underprice it a little bit, price it right at the appropriate market, or price it just under. And what happens when you underprice it, you get more visibility because everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's a deal. That kind of house in that area, those specs. Sure. Oh my gosh, that's a deal. Look how low priced it is. And everybody's looking at it, which then makes everybody start bidding and saying, you know what? I saw 6 other people lined up outside waiting to look at the house. We got to put in a good offer. I'm not going to put in 250. I'm going to put in 258. I'm going to put in 262. And I don't want any closing costs because I don't want to lose anything from the seller. And that's how you have a little bit more success versus overpricing and then having to drop it down each week and then, eventually just take whatever somebody throws at you at that point because it's been sitting for a month or two.
So you come a little low. So you come in a little low and appropriately price it. But then it sounds like to me from what you're saying is potentially you can make up for it because of the visibility and more people become interested in it. Then it turns into a bidding war, which pushes it up to the level that you kind of wanted it at anyway. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And because what happens, what most sellers think is if I overprice it, that gives me room to give up some concessions if I need to. Oh. And that's what they're thinking in their head, right? But actually, if you price it just right or underprice it even a little bit, people come up and then you actually don't give up any concessions whatsoever because there's too much demand on it, right? And it just a simple flip of the switch like that. I'm giving y'all free game. I usually wouldn't tell somebody until I sat down with them. But that's just one of those ways to kind of beat out and get a lot of competition is, price it fair or price it just under, let people rush to it, get more traction, get more attention. It's got great photos. It's on 150 websites. Right. And then at that point, you're going to get a lot of attraction and you're going to get, hopefully, if it's a good home delivered in good condition, you're going to get a lot of action on it.
Man, that is really good stuff. Excellent stuff, man. This is stuff I had never heard. And really good insight to the audience, and it's really good information that is going to, I think, hopefully drive people towards you because you know what you're talking about, man.
Thank
Most
you,
definitely.
Hope so.
Well, TJ, man, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. And again, sharing your knowledge, with the audience. I definitely appreciate it, man. You gave some really good, as I said at the beginning, insightful information. And you framed it in a way that even I learned a lot of stuff today, a lot of information, man. I'm going to be looking to sell my house here in the next year, probably. So those are things I'm going to put in my mental Rolodex for sure. And I'll come and talk to you. How about that?
My man, I appreciate it. And hey, Curtis, man, thanks for what you're doing, man, sharing this knowledge, getting the information out to the people. But it's definitely always fun to chat with your brother and be able to help others while doing it.
Man, we appreciate you, man. Well, tell me one thing, man. How can we get in contact with you? Give me a little information, contact information for you.
Absolutely. So first off, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at the Nashville Teaching Realtor, and I'll bring up both of my pages. If you don't have that, Always welcome to call me at 615-592-1045, or you can email me at TJ at rognashville.com. TJ at rognashville.com. I'm always telling folks, hey, if you ever want to get an early start about home ownership, don't wait till the last second, or don't say, well, I'm not ready, so I don't want to talk to a realtor yet. That's what I do. I help people get ready. I've talked to people and then, they didn't do something until 12 months later, but they got the information so they could start their plan. If you have a concern about, buying a home, and if you're ready for it, it's always good to start the conversation early so you can take 6 to 12 months and do what you need to do. So, but yeah, reach out to me anytime, ask a question, schedule a call. I always want to help anybody that wants to learn about owning a home.
Man, that sounds great. And I'm going to have your information at the end of the video so that everybody can see it and contact you. Again, sir,
awesome, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Curtis.
Now, please join me next week for next week's episode, where my special guest is going to be wealth advisor Lynn Williams. Now, our discussion is going to be basically about navigating the market in these uncertain times. Some really good information. Now, if you want to contact me, please email me at curtis@practical-finances.com, or you can follow me on the various social media platforms, Facebook at @practical_finances, on Instagram, which is @practical_finances, or at YouTube at YouTube/Practical Finances. Again, I want to thank you for joining us this week. You have yourself a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. And until then, though, you be blessed, okay? Thank you so very much.